Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Poda Holdings live corporate webinar. This is David Vidala from RBMG. Poda is listed on the CSE under the symbol PODA and the OTC under the symbol PODAF. Joining us today is the company's CEO, Mr. Ryan Selby. He's being joined by Mr. Nick Kadysh and Mr. Michael Nederhoff. They will provide an overview of Poda's current operations, and we'll be discussing tar reduction, product opportunities, and what differentiates Poda from the rest of the market. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up for questions for management to address. If you are interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions to us directly in the question module. Please note, this presentation is being recorded today, Wednesday, September 29th, and will soon be made available on the company's website. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of the events anticipated by the forward-looking statements will occur, or if they do occur, what benefits the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of the control of the company. Poda's presentation is available at poda-holdings.com, and their full disclaimer is on page 2 of that presentation. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or broker-dealer. For more information, please visit rbmilestone.com. And now I'll hand it off to the Poda team. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thanks, David. I appreciate the introduction, and welcome to everybody joining us for this webinar today. I'm, very pleased to be joined by my two fantastic colleagues, Mr. Nick Kadysh and Mr. Mike Nederhoff. Nick is the former head of corporate affairs for JUUL Canada, has a tremendous amount of experience in the regulatory space, spent a lot of time working with Red Bull as well as in the political arena before that, and has really a fantastic grasp of the regulatory space that surround reduced risk harm reduction products, and a tremendous amount of experience on the ground with launching products into new markets. And then Mr. Nederhoff, Mike, he has spent a ton of time really building companies on the ground, as an integral part of the launch of Red Bull into Canada, and as the former president of JUUL Canada. Mike has a tremendous amount of experience actually deploying and building substantial operations in these exciting growth opportunity areas on a very large scale. And so, both Nick and Mike bring a tremendous amount of value to this company. I feel very privileged to work with both of them, and I am just so happy to be joined by them today to sort of have a little discussion about what we see as some opportunities for Poda, touch on some of the harm reduction aspects of the product, the regulatory opportunities that we see, as well as some of the product opportunities we see across a number of different verticals. So just as a top level overview, Poda recently changed its name from Poda Lifestyle to Poda Holdings, and we incorporated 6 new subsidiaries. The reason we did this is that we really believe our product has tremendous application across a very wide variety of completely different product categories. And so by incorporating Poda Holdings as the parent company and then forming our strategic subsidiaries, it really allows us to focus our efforts across those 6 strategic growth opportunities for the company. So, I guess I wanted to, start it off by just saying, Nick, welcome and thanks for all the contributions over the past months. It's been fantastic having you on the team. Maybe you could just give a little overview for the investors and people watching today of why you've joined Poda and some of the exciting opportunities you see ahead of us.
Sure, absolutely. Well, look, I spent quite a bit of time in the tobacco and nicotine space at JUUL Labs, launched a couple of products in a couple of different markets, including Russia and Canada. And I think Poda represents something pretty unique in that it is a technology platform that allows for a lot of flexibility. One thing that is certainly true of the nicotine and tobacco space is regulations move very, very quickly. We saw a lot of that at JUUL Labs just in Canada alone. And certainly, like, this is not a trend that will change at any time in the near future. So having a technology platform that allows for not just scalability, but for rapid change to substrates, to the contents of the pods or sticks, however you want to refer to them, and just being able to adapt to changing regulatory environments and to tailor your products to the specific regulatory regime of different countries, I think that's crucial. I don't think that you can be successful in the tobacco and nicotine space without that. And it's something that most companies don't have. So that's what got me really excited about Poda, and that's basically why I joined. And we can talk more about it.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I think, you really hit on something that I'm very passionate about, and that's the ability for us to deploy our product into markets on a global level and tailor the offerings for each specific market in order to fully comply with any regulatory regulations as they may exist or change over time, as well as to offer products that really appeal to customers in each area. And customers have different tastes and preferences across different regions. And so with our close-ended pods, it gives us a huge amount of flexibility to really specifically target those areas, both from a regulatory as well as a consumer preference point of view. And I think this is a nice segue into sort of the harm reduction aspect of it, and which is something that, Michael, in our conversations, I know it's something you're very passionate about. I am also passionate about the potential for reduced risk products to really provide an opportunity for consumers of tobacco and nicotine to switch to a potentially dramatically reduced risk alternative for a way for continuing using nicotine. As I say, I think the best choice for any current smoker is to quit smoking right now. Unfortunately, that's not a reality for many current tobacco users. And that's where I think Poda has a tremendous opportunity to provide exciting and better alternatives for a potentially safer way to consume tobacco and nicotine. And so, Nick, maybe you can touch a little bit, or sorry, Mike, you could touch a little bit on your background and why you're excited to be on the Poda team and the opportunities you see in the harm reduction space.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ryan. Absolute pleasure to be here and obviously speaking with you guys today. I've scaled a few companies in Canada. I like getting in at the ground level and seeing things grow. And I'm also a big believer in harm reduction. My father's been a 40-year smoker. So anything that I can, help drive from a commercialization standpoint, to help, create the opportunity for further harm reduction for smokers or whatever harm reduction opportunities are out there, it's something I'm a big believer in. And I think one of the key facets for Poda is the lack of youth appeal that this product presents. I'm also a father of 2 teenage boys, and to have something that affords the opportunity for harm reduction for my dad, but doesn't have the appeal to my kids, is a real winner in my mind, especially with the technology that Ryan and team have created.
Yeah, no, that's, that's a fantastic point, and it's something that I think it really cannot be overstated, the value of that. And maybe that's a nice segue to Nick in terms of talking about some of the regulatory hurdles and opportunities that we see for the Poda product. In some ways, specifically the fact that Poda is quite a different product than many of the e-cigarettes or other products that are out there. I think most people are familiar with combustible smoking and are familiar with electronic cigarettes. There's not really been that much awareness of heat not burn as an alternative in North America. It's really something that's had a tremendous success in Asia, very rapidly increasing in adoption in Europe, but we really haven't seen it catch on in North America yet. And I think with the recent FDA crackdown on the e-cigarette market through the PMTA and other things, I think is creating a tremendous opportunity for Poda in the North American market to provide products that, like you said, don't appeal to youth and have the ability to convert current adult smokers from higher risk combustible products to potentially lower risk heat not burn or heated tobacco products. So, Nick, maybe you can touch on some of the recent developments in the US with the FDA and some of the upheaval that market's in, and maybe some of the opportunities you see for Poda.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really, we're talking about two different types of technology, right? You have e-liquid, e-vapor, sort of vaping products, however you want to describe them. Each country has a different descriptor, where you're heating a synthetically derived liquid, mostly with natural nicotine. So you're taking natural nicotine out of tobacco leaves, you're putting it in a suspension, a liquid that is then heated up and then aspirated. With Poda, it's a heat not burn device. So we're talking about heating a substrate, whether that be tobacco or whatever else. It can be cannabis, it could be tobacco, it can be another substrate that is sprayed with synthetic nicotine, as in Poda's Beyond Burn blend. Yeah, as in with the Beyond Burn blend. But I think broadly worldwide, what we've seen is, whether it's intentional or not, and I can't really say, right? But we've seen regulators sort of give preference to heat not burn technology. So, in Japan, heat not burn devices have now taken, I think, over a third of the total tobacco market. Huge, huge growth, massive opportunity. And in the US, still to this day, there's only two devices or products that have been given a PMTA, right? That's a pre-market tobacco authorization. That's what allows you to be a licensed non-traditional cigarette, so not combustible cigarettes, but a novel nicotine product on the US market. And the only two things that have gotten a PMTA is a heat not burn device and a snus. So it's a little pouch of tobacco that you put under your lip. I think from a regulatory perspective, what regulators are really worried about with vaping devices, and the reason that none have been granted a PMTA so far, is they're trying to look at the balance between converting cigarette smokers, which they acknowledge is a goal of public health, and onboarding youth, which is sort of the downside of this. And the FDA has very, very little appetite for any device that they think will be appealing to youth. But they have functionally made a decision that heat not burn devices do not fall into that category. And so they are, in the current context, at least one has been deemed appropriate for the protection of public health. And at Poda, we have a really good shot of getting a PMTA, frankly, because of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, Nick, you and I just spent the last week in London at the GTNF conference, which is the Global Tobacco and Nicotine Forum. It brings together many of the industry leaders in nicotine delivery systems, be that e-cigarettes or heat not burn products or snus or any of the other modern alternatives to combustible smoking. And I think, one of the key takeaways I had is that at a certain level, what we're doing here is using technology to create appealing alternatives that have the potential to dramatically reduce the risks associated with combustible smoking. And at a certain level, it's surprising that governments around the world aren't viewing this as manna from heaven. You can take our higher risk combustible cigarette users and transition them to much lower risk alternatives to that, and do that in a way that still provides satisfaction to those users. I think like I said, it would be great if tobacco didn't exist and everybody could just quit smoking tobacco. Unfortunately, I think governments realize that that's just not a reality. And so, there's all sorts of actions being taken on increasing taxes, increasing the cost, reducing access, preventing youth access, so many things to reduce combustible smoking. And often many of the alternatives, like electronic cigarettes, get lumped into that same category. And I think that's an unfortunate thing, because, I'm a believer that heat not burn has a huge potential. I also think electronic cigarettes have huge potential. I really believe all forms of harm reduction in the tobacco and nicotine space should be embraced as really phenomenal agents of change that have the potential to really make an incredible difference in the lives of over 1 billion tobacco users globally. But I think that's an important point to say that there's a huge concern about creating new nicotine users. Governments say, look, we want to transition our cigarette users, but we don't want to create new nicotine users. And I think that's where electronic cigarettes and other products have a challenging time walking the line between converting traditional cigarette users and not appealing to new nicotine users. And with a heat not burn product, I really think this is the opportunity for us, and that for somebody who doesn't smoke, heat not burn really doesn't hold a lot of appeal. It's not going to deliver that cotton candy flavor that an e-cigarette can deliver. It's not the use case where you can just use it in a sneaky way. With heat not burn, you take a cigarette out of the pack, you put it into the heating device, you turn it on, you use it for the 5-minute session, and then when you're done, you dispose of the cigarette. In Poda's case, into your green bin, but in other heat not burn products, into the ashtray or the garbage. And so that use case in and of itself really appeals to smokers and is not something that I think holds much opportunity to create those new nicotine users. And so, in the tobacco space, I think that's a tremendous opportunity for Poda on a global level. Now, switching gears a little bit, I think, we touched on the closed-ended pod of Poda and what opportunities that creates for us, and how that gives us the flexibility to work with many different substrates. And so, I guess, Mike, maybe flipping it over to you, do you see opportunities for Poda across, the tobacco space, tobacco alternatives, the cannabis space, the CBD space? From a user perspective, I think we can deliver something very unique and exciting, that one device can heat all of these different substances and allow that consumer choice. And so, maybe you can touch on some of the opportunities you see, at least maybe in the Canada cannabis space. I know your involvement with I'll turn it over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So after leaving JUUL, I'm now the CEO of a cannabis company in Canada. And I think there's tremendous application because the same things apply in nicotine delivery as they do in cannabis, right? And finding a better way to deliver product for, different uses that people intend to use it for. And that could be CBD, it could be a THC product, it could be a caffeine derived product. There's just so many applications that we could pursue with the technology that's been created by Poda.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree. And I think, one of the major advantages we have is that we developed our own proprietary production method for making our consumable pods. And what that allows is we can create our pods at such an incredibly low price point that it allows us to compete head on in the tobacco space, but also to capture market space across a very wide swath. And maybe Nick, you can touch on some of the, from your experience in the tobacco regulatory space. Obviously, taxes form a huge component of the price of cigarettes, combustible cigarettes. And at current time, in many jurisdictions, those taxes are also levied on heated tobacco products. And so, maybe some of the opportunities you see for competing in the space, as well as opportunities to use alternative substances, which may not be subject to the same tax structures.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in any market, pretty much globally, the majority of the cost of a cigarette is taxation. You have a border-based taxes, so like excise tax. You have usually, sin taxes on top of that. And so, the cost of a cigarette is functionally, 90% tax, 10% cigarette. That is not the case globally with nicotine alternatives. You have preferential taxation, number one, less sin tax, because at the end of the day, it is less harmful, right? The original basis for these sin taxes was you're going to be damaging your health. We're going to have to pay for your health care later. So, we're gonna tax this as a disincentive for use. Obviously, you want to create a preferential taxation regime where the less harmful thing is cheaper for the end user. Now, that's not the case everywhere, but that is generally the case. You also have some really interesting regimes for these types of products globally. I mean, like in Japan, for anyone who's been to Japan in the last 3 years, you cannot smoke inside a restaurant, most restaurants, but you can actually use a heat not burn device. because they emit far less, sort of atmospheric emissions than, burning a cigarette. But in terms of taxation, there's also a couple of really interesting sort of nuances in the tobacco nicotine space. For instance, in many countries, synthetic nicotine products like Poda's Beyond Burn Blend are not taxed the same way as even heat not burn devices that use traditional tobacco inside as a substrate for the device. So a lot of interesting opportunities, but I come back to this idea that if you have sort of a system and IP, which Ryan's done a really good job of inventing, right? If you have this IP, you can be nimble and you can adjust to changing circumstance. And that's really, to my mind, that's the biggest thing from a regulatory perspective, is just being able to adapt quickly and being nimble in the marketplace is a massive advantage. And I will say, having spent a lot of time in the nicotine space, is tobacco companies are, generally speaking, not the most innovative companies in the world. The last major innovation in tobacco was the invention of the automatic rolling machine like 100 years ago, right? So having a person in the lead for Poda who is an innovator himself, who has deep experience, doing fast prototyping, getting innovation out the door, patenting that innovation, that's a massive asset in this category because a lot of people just don't have it.
Well, thanks for that. Pat myself on the back. No,
I did the patting for you. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. We've done some very exciting things. I'm so proud of our team here and the IP that we've created. I think it's creating, with having our patent filed in almost 65 countries around the world, I think we've built a very strong base to expand our product globally. I think, creating the world's first closed-ended heat-not-burn cigarettes gives us a huge competitive advantage in the space because we can just entirely eliminate the cleaning requirements that any other device suffers from. It gives us the ability to work with a huge variety of substrates. And I think those are things that really can't be overstated. With an open-ended cigarette in a heat-not-burn device, contamination is a major factor, flavor degradation is a factor, performance degradation over time is a factor, and those are things that our technology entirely eliminates. And so, I'm very excited to continue rolling this product out. I feel very lucky over the past months to have raised a little over $20 million for the company. We're now using those funds to actually deploy towards increasing our production capacity so that we can start rolling our products out into markets around the world. We've got an order for 500,000 pods in. We're constantly building up new opportunities. I just spent the week in Europe and in London and on the mainland European continent, had some fantastic meetings. I can say there is a tremendous amount of interest, both from big tobacco as well as some other players in the space. And we are, really excited to be doing what we're doing. I think, I feel so lucky to have the team we've put together, to have the expertise in the space. And really that brings me to my next point of bringing on somebody like Nick and Michael. That is a strategic move for us in a number of ways, but importantly, as we grow the business, we want to do it in a strategic and sustainable way and to avoid some of the pitfalls that other products and companies in the space have succumbed to. I think many people are fairly aware of the rise and decline of the JUUL product. A lot of that was due to maybe some unintentional missteps or unfortunate regulatory things. And so, maybe I throw it out to either of you guys if you want to touch on some of the ways you think we can continue to avoid these pitfalls. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, talk about our past pitfalls.
I think it all starts with the product, honestly, Ryan, and that is how amazing the product is and the appeal to existing smokers with a lack of appeal to non-smokers. And as you mentioned before, the intention isn't to onboard a bunch of non-nicotine users. So it all starts with the product. And then as we begin to scale the company, I think it's really important, and Nick taught me this in our time at JUUL, was to look at everything that we do corporately through the eyes of a regulator. And that's whatever country we participate in. So let's not, expand into any new countries where there isn't a regulatory framework that's set up for success already and acceptance of this product. And then, in North America, it's really forging ahead and making corporate moves and thinking about it from the eyes and minds of regulators. Because if we don't, we're going to get, caught. But, again, this all starts with the product and the appeal of product to existing smokers and not to non-users. And that's critical here.
Yeah, can I jump in here? Well, since Mike talked about regulatory, I'll talk about commercial. One thing that Mike and Ryan have been really, really smart about in planning out the company's sort of expansion is you can't leave people hanging, right? Like people who use cigarettes are nicotine addicts. And so, once you enter a market, you have to fulfill, right? They have to be able to get, like if they switch to your device, they have to get access to your product whenever they need it. And these guys have been very, very smart about making sure that, the company expands only to places where we can have a durable position for the long term. And I think that's something that a lot of new entrants in this space don't think about.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually a question I sometimes get, is like, when is the product going to be available? When can I buy it? And that's one of the things where I would love to be launching this everywhere right now. I think the challenge with that is if we do that, we won't be able to sustain the demand for the product until our production reaches the point of being able to do that. And that's, I think, where it's really a strategic move for us to ensure that when we enter a market, we have the ability for, after converting a customer to our system, to consistently supply them with product as, for the coming years and decades. And I think that's, I would ask all of our investors and stakeholders to, be patient with us as we build a strong and stable business here. We're really not going for a flash in the pan approach where like, we're just going to sell out all our inventory and wow, we sold out. That I think is going to lead to a scenario of, users coming onto our system and then leaving our system and going, in the worst case scenario, back to combustible cigarettes or to, other alternative nicotine delivery systems. And so, we're really focused on a long-term strategic growth. Personally, I think this company has the opportunity to compete head on with the biggest tobacco companies in the world. I think we have a technology that allows us perhaps to compete in a way that they can't even dream of competing, like I mentioned, by entering into a whole host of different spaces as our strategic verticals sort of illuminate. And so, I think I'm extremely excited about what we're doing here as a company. We've recently invested in a production facility, which is going to be turning out over 10 million pods per month. We hope to have that fully operational and complete by the end of the year, which means 2022 is going to be a very exciting year for Poda as our production hits that point of being able to roll out from that 10 million every month. We can continue to add substantial production volume. I also would say many people hear 10 million and they think, wow, that's a huge number. But I would say in the tobacco and nicotine space, 10 million is a teeny tiny drop in the bucket. There's over 5.7 trillion cigarettes legally purchased and smoked per year. That doesn't even take into account the black market and some of the other markets which don't report, like China. And so that could be well over 10 trillion cigarettes per year being smoked globally. And so 10 million compared to 10 trillion, it's really doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. And so, I think that's a fantastic start for us. Obviously, we're very excited to be building that out. Where do I see us by the end of 2022? I think that 10 million is going to look like a tiny production compared to what we're able to do by the end of the year. And so, I'm excited for the future. I think currently, our stock price has, we had a fantastic beginning of the summer. And then, due to, I'm not really sure exactly what happened. I mean, none of the insiders are selling. Nobody I know is selling. We're all very long on this story. I'm not taking a huge salary from the company. I'm not selling any shares. Even if the share price was at $5, I wouldn't be selling a single share. And that's because I really believe that this is a fantastic opportunity to change the world and to become a real player in the global space. And so, I think from an investor point of view, I think this is an opportunity to get on board with a company that has a very strong mission, a sustainable product, and a way to potentially capture a tremendous market share in an over $800 billion per year revenue market in the tobacco space alone. That's not even talking about the CBD space, the cannabis space, the caffeine delivery, our therapeutics, our smoking cessation. There are so many opportunities for this company. And I think as the months continue to roll on and we actually start to move from a building it phase to an actual revenue driving profitability phase, I think we're going to see a tremendous appreciation in the stock price and in the things that we're able to do with that. So yeah, thank you everybody for bearing with us and for believing in us. And Michael and Nick, I think I can't thank you enough for joining the team. I'm so excited to have both of you guys working with me. It's a tremendous resource to be able to pick your brains on strategy, how to approach different aspects of the product, connections to different industry leaders, regulatories, whether it be scientific analysis labs, PMTA processes, strategic partnerships rolling out into the cannabis or CBD space. I think you guys bring a tremendous amount of value to the company. And so thank you for joining and thank you for being with me here today. I guess maybe at this point, it's a good time to turn it over to some Q&A if there are any questions. I noticed that there's a question here from Jason. When will the product be available to Canadians, even the clinical trial? I turned 50, I've smoked for 35 years and I'm looking for an alternative. I'm currently an investor. Well, thank you, Jason, first for being an investor and for believing in the product. Like I said, we'll be launching our product in Canada as soon as we possibly can. We are working on everything that we need to do to make sure that we do that in a responsible and sustainable way. And so, stay tuned for updates as soon as it's available. You'll be the first to know. I would also encourage everybody to go to our website, subscribe to our mailing list. As soon as products are available, we'll be sending out a notice through that mailing list with information on how to order it. So yeah, thanks, Jason. Another question from Mario. Any updates on the ESON deal? So yes, we're working closely with ESON. They're very excited. We've got a number of opportunities with them. They're currently working on developing the packaging and product rollout for the product. As soon as I have more information available on a concrete level on that, we'll be bringing out a news release, setting out what the terms of the deal are and as we move forward. But very much, yes, there's still a tremendous opportunity and interest level from ESON. They have a herbal cigarette product, which they're currently selling, well over 50 million per month. I think their 250 million per month capacity is about to come online. They've got customers throughout Asia and the European market, and they're very excited to be launching the Poda product into those markets as well as new opportunities. So, okay, a question from Kara. Can you give us a snapshot of how consumer trials have gone to date? So, essentially, we haven't done any official consumer trials. We've done a tremendous amount of unofficial trials. We've gotten the product into a lot of people's hands for testing. The feedback has been very overwhelmingly positive. I think, our Beyond Burn blend is such an exciting opportunity because while it contains absolutely no tobacco ingredients, it delivers an experience that's very similar to a tobacco heat not burn product. And so I think the feedback on those products have been fantastic. In the CBD and THC space, the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, delivering a very high efficacy of the product and an enjoyable and extremely convenient way to do that. And so I think there are tons of unofficial product feedback that has been fantastic. And as we continue to move forward, we'll be doing larger scale rollouts on consumer trials, specifically focused on individual markets. Okay, another question here. Does Poda already have the demand for the new facility once it is operational at 10 million per month? That's a great question. And the short answer is unofficially, yes. I'm not going to get into any of the specific discussions that we have at this point, but I think once we have the ability to be supplying those, sales are not going to be an issue on that front. So. Sorry, Mike and Nick, I'm kind of just taking these questions here, but
all good, man.
If anybody
All
has a
good.
question specifically for Mike or Nick, I'm happy to pass that over to them as well.
Ryan, I have a question for Nick since he spoke to it earlier in the presentation. The PMTA process and how long does that take? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, sure. The actual like analysis of the PMTA takes about a year. So like that's how long it takes the regulator, or how long historically it has taken the regulator to look over the application. Putting together the application can take a long time, frankly. The biggest issues usually, without a PMTA currently, you can't go into the US market. And so the US regulator has a hard preference for scientific data that's gathered in the US, but you can't go to the US, so you have to go to other places. It becomes very challenging. The one really interesting opportunity in front of PODA is the Beyond Burn blend is not currently subject to PMTA. Now, that doesn't mean that Ryan's gonna like run into the US market immediately and cause a big fuss, right? What that means is we can do scientific trials in the US because we're not subject to PMTA, and have a really good conversation with the regulators. Say, look, we understand that this is not subject to PMTA today, but it will be one day, we're sure of that. And so we're going to be the responsible company that we are. We're going to go into the US, we're going to do our clinical trials because we can, legally we're able to, and then we're going to file for a PMTA when the time is right. And that's going to drive down the cost of doing the PMTA and all the scientific research that goes into it. And it's gonna make the process go a lot faster, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I feel so lucky to have Nick working with us closely on this, having firsthand experience in the PMTA process, as well as being able to provide insights like he just shared there on how to set up the best possible PMTA application and really design the process for success from the ground up. I'm committed to total compliance with whatever regulatory regime or situation is in any market that we enter. And in the US, that happens to be the PMTA process. The PMTA is for tobacco and tobacco related products. As a synthetic nicotine product that contains no tobacco, we currently are not subject to that because we have no tobacco products for sale in the US, and our product can't be used with any other tobacco product. But like Nick said, we don't anticipate that that's going to last forever. And we really do want to take a strategic approach to rolling out into the US market in order to provide a very strong base for growth over the next 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 year period. I think heat not burn is not going away. It delivers a fantastic consumer experience while having the potential to dramatically reduce the risks associated with combustible smoking. And so I think, we've got to do this right. I'm not looking at the next 6 months and let's just go as fast as we can, sell as much as we can, and then have our product yanked from the shelves. That's not my goal. And that's really something where I believe there's a very long-term strategic benefit to taking the right approach to doing this. So.
One of the key determiners that lends itself to a successful PMTA application is the regulator seeing through scientific proof that there's a net benefit to society through the product that they're looking at. And that's why we continue to hammer home the balance of low youth appeal with a significant harm reduction opportunity. So when we do the work on this, I think we've got a really strong platform to show the regulator through science and through clinical trials that the harm reduction opportunity here is really strong without the appeal of youth. And that really lends itself to a positive application.
Thank you.
That. Okay, I don't know if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I don't want to keep people too long here. I appreciate everybody who's stuck with us this long. But like I said, we're all very passionate about what we're doing here. We think there is a tremendous opportunity for PODA to compete on a global level with some of the biggest players in an over $800 billion a year space. And so I think I appreciate everybody who's invested in us to date, everybody who believes in what we're doing. I'm so thankful to have the team members that we have the fantastic team that works with me here in Vancouver, as well as our global advisory board. We've got John Ruiz with a former PMI background, has a tremendous amount of expertise in actually launching products into different markets around the world and setting up teams and distribution networks to make sure that that's done successfully. We've got Daniel Chen with Eson, who has a successful business selling his herbal cigarettes globally and sees a tremendous opportunity to help Poda to both scale our product into markets around the world, as well as ensure that our manufacturing and everything is in China is really happening at a level that's beyond reproach. And so, having that strategic advisory board, as well as having a fantastic team on the ground here, I think we're very well set for the coming months and years as we build this business to what I believe is going to be a truly enormous global player. So thank you guys all for joining us. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, RBMG Group, for hosting us today on this webinar. And thanks to everybody for watching and joining us.
Right. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar recording will soon be made available on Poda's website. If you have any additional questions that have not been addressed on this webinar, please feel free to email us at poda@rbmilestone.com. Again, that's poda@rbmilestone.com. Thank you, and you are now free to disconnect.